Here are some lessons that we learned about decoupled Drupal architecture over the years. So decoupled Drupal is really popular, and we've done a lot of that work over the years. A lot of people have a Drupal site, and it's ugly and it's slow. So they go through this big decoupling and redesign project, and at the end of it, they have a Drupal site that is pretty and slow. So what happened? Well, first, you need to start with your why. You need to have a really good reason why you should decouple your Drupal site. There are lots of good reasons to decouple your Drupal site. Maybe you have a lot of endpoints that you want to build off of your Drupal site. Maybe you have a lot of content sources or data sources that you want to pull into your Drupal site. Maybe you want to add a search function that spans multiple sites. Maybe you want to add an AI assistant or chatbot that spans multiple Drupal sites, that pulls content and data from multiple sites. All of those are great reasons. Some other reasons that people don't often consider are perhaps you have sections of your site that aren't often updated. Maybe there are entire areas of your site that only get updated maybe once a quarter or a few times a year, and there are other sections of your site that are constantly being updated or that are very dynamic. In those cases, it might make sense to decouple your website. Additionally, maybe you have apps that you want to build off of your website. That includes native or progressive web apps. Those are also very good reasons. If you don't have a goal other than make it faster, you really should not be considering a decoupled Drupal architecture. If your website is simply slow, then you need to be looking at the underlying architecture and optimize its performance. Don't pick a front-end tool without a plan. They are not created equal. Front-end tools change day by day, it seems. Gatsby, for example, is really great for a static site. Not so great for a dynamic site. If your editors want to see changes go live right away, Gatsby is not the best tool for you. Make sure your front-end and hosting are compatible for what you're trying to do. Some features may only be available in certain situations. For example, Next.js has a feature called incremental server-side rendering that works best on Vercel, their native hosting platform. You can get those types of things to work elsewhere, but if you choose something that requires a file system on a serverless host, it won't work as expected, if at all. New front-end tools are popping up all the time. Will the hot new thing be here in a year? Who knows? You should choose something that is well supported and time-tested. Do look outside of Drupal and make use of other services wherever possible. So this includes search, mail, anything else that has an API that you can tap into. You should save whatever processing time you can and allow Drupal to prioritize what it does really well: content management. Drupal is really good at permissions and access and handling authenticated users. When you use a separate system, you lose a lot of functionality. When you decouple, you often lose this because you have to create a separate authentication flow that doesn't necessarily understand how Drupal handles permissions. If you can, authenticate Drupal through the front end. It adds an extra step, but it allows Drupal to do something it does really well, and it will prevent a lot of confusion and headaches later on down the road. For example, unpublished or old versions of content. Third-party authentication systems won't necessarily be able to distinguish between that and live versions of content, current versions of content. Drupal can, so it's just a lot easier to use Drupal's authentication system in that instance. Overriding this behavior can have all kinds of ripple effects: sitemaps, data from views, blocks, etc. Do consider where and how assets will be managed. This includes images, videos, documents. In this case, it is potentially a disadvantage to use Drupal. It may be better to store assets outside of the CMS, or at least mirror them somewhere else like S3. Not executing PHP to load an image will improve performance, and you won't expose URLs to the backend. It's really easy to overthink and over-engineer decoupled architecture. It's best to slow down, think it through, and build the smallest possible version first.